One state Supreme Court is trying to figure out if tenants have the right to a jury trial in eviction cases. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting topic for you today, and it has to do with eviction court cases, right? So, in some states, jury trials are a possibility if you're fighting your eviction, right? But in other states, like the state where I live, Nebraska, it's not an option, okay? So, right now it's gone all the way up to the Supreme Court here in Nebraska, and they're trying to determine whether a tenant has a right to a jury trial in an eviction court case, right? Now, obviously, I am 100% opposed to it because this will be used and abused by tenants who do not want to pay their bills, by, lawyers who want to get paid, and by, these people who basically want to get rid of the irregular system that we're going through now and then put in place a system where landlords have less property rights. So I'm 100% opposed to it. I think it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, and that the grand majority of tenants, there's nothing to fight, okay? Like I've said many times, 90% plus of all evictions are for non-payment of rent. Okay, they're not for any other reason. What is there to fight other than, if you admit to the allegation that you haven't paid the rent, then you've already lost. That's my personal opinion. Okay, but they think, oh yeah, we need to get these tenants a right to a jury trial. So what's going to happen in a jury trial, right? The tenant's going to go up there, yeah, I didn't pay the rent because I lost my job or whatever, and maybe they're able to get some sympathy from a juror, right? And then the jurors then make it, oh, well, we'll let you stay for a little bit longer because, you did lose your job and we feel bad for you, right? But simply put, that doesn't change the fact that you didn't pay, that you owe the landlord money. All of the facts are still there, and I don't think that people who don't have a legal background should even be trying to make this sort of decision, okay? That's my personal opinion. I think you're going to waste a lot of time and money from, not just for the court, but also for the landlords. The landlords are going to be the victims of this, and we're going to be the ones suffering with extremely high legal costs, right? And you know what we do when we get high costs, right? We tack them onto the rent. That's what we're going to do. That's what I'm going to do if I have to face this. Remember, I own rental properties here in Omaha, Nebraska. So if I face eviction cases that suddenly are going to jury, right? Well, there's a couple of reactions that I personally would do. I might just say, hey, I'm out of the rental business. I'm sick of this crap. I don't want to deal with this anymore. Maybe I'll just sell my properties. Okay? But anyway, before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think of jury trials for eviction cases? Do you think this is a good idea, or do you think this is a bad idea? Okay? And if you think it's a good idea or bad idea, say why down in the comments. Anyway, let's get into the article. This article is coming from the StarHerald.com, and it says, Nebraska Supreme Court considering whether tenants have a right to jury trial in eviction cases. Let's get into it. The Nebraska Supreme Court is considering a case that will determine whether tenants have a constitutional right to a jury trial when they're being evicted. Legal Aid of Nebraska and Nebraska Appleseed call NP Dodge Management and Teresa Holcomb a landmark case. In it, they are jointly representing Holcomb, an Omaha tenant fighting eviction, and asking the state Supreme Court to find unconstitutional state statute 761446, which outlines the procedure for trials in such cases. Holcomb asked for, but was denied, a jury trial when NP Dodge sought to evict her. She appealed. Casey Ogle, a senior staff attorney for Collective Impact Lincoln, a partnership between Nebraska Appleseed and Civic Nebraska, said eviction court proceedings are a legal process unlike any other in the state. So here's the thing, right? You notice that the people representing her, they are these activist groups, okay? And they don't give a crap anything about, the money that landlords have to spend, and they don't want anyone evicted ever. That's the truth. They don't want anyone to be evicted ever. And they will do anything they can to make sure that tenants, whether they're paying their rent or not, whether they're breaking the rules or not, they'll do everything they can to make sure they can stay inside their units, right? And because I think that they falsely believe that, hey, landlords are always the bad guy, tenants are always the good guy, and that tenants are always getting screwed over. And that's just not the case. So many eviction cases are between small landlords who, some of them are lower income, some of them are middle income, etc., right? And a tenant who also might be lower or middle income, right? So we're talking about two different people on equal ground. They wrote a contract, a lease agreement, where they agreed to certain terms and conditions, and for some reason, the tenant wasn't able to pay the rent. Now, maybe they had a lot of bad circumstances go on in their life, right? But that isn't the fault of the landlord. I've said that so many times. It is not our responsibility to make sure that you have somewhere to live. That is your responsibility as an adult. Okay, to pay your bills, to make sure that you can afford the housing, and if you can't, then you have to make adjustments. Okay, it is not our responsibility. We are not the homeless shelter. We are not the social housing provider, and we never should be. Okay, so if you can't fulfill the terms of the contract that you signed, then you need to go. You need to go find somewhere else to live. And you know what? All of this fighting this and trying to make it so that, hey, we have jury trials so that maybe you can garner some sympathy, stay even longer, drag out the whole process, because a jury trial will drag it out and make the process even longer. So rather than being able to remove tenant quickly, within a month, right? Maybe it's going to take 2-3 months while you're waiting to get in court, and it's stupid, it's ridiculous, and it's basically punishing the landlord for doing business, which would drive a small landlord such as myself with, I have 4 single family houses here in Nebraska, right? 4 single family rentals. That's it. It's not that many, but I could sell them all to owner occupants, and none of them are rentals anymore. And guess what? Now the renters are like, well, why can't we find any housing? Where are all the landlords going? They've quit because you put stupid rules in place. It's an extremely fast process that deprives tenants of a legitimate opportunity to raise a defense, she said. Ogle said ensuring jury trials in Nebraska eviction courts would create a fair chance for tenants in the courtroom to present a meaningful defense before potentially losing their homes. In criminal cases, the court now looks to the seriousness of the offense to determine whether a defendant is entitled to a trial by jury. She and her counterpart at Legal Aid of Nebraska, Caitlin Sedfeld, wrote in a brief to the court. Orders in eviction cases could result in the removal of a family from its home, or a business losing its operating space, or a farmer losing access to their crops, they said. Yeah, but they don't make the mention of the monetary component here, right? So the monetary component means that the grand majority, like 90% plus, maybe even 95% plus of evictions. I think the last stat I read, it said about 92% of all evictions were because of non-payment of rent. Okay, so, but it might even be higher in some areas, but simply put, if 90% plus of all eviction cases are for this reason, right, then that takes away any defense. Okay, they don't have a defense to that. I mean, other than making excuses. Now, maybe they can work out well, you know what, I need a little bit more time, or I'll work out a payment method. That's something that they need to be doing directly with the landlord. That is not something where you need a jury trial for. Okay, that's just stupid. Only thing they're doing is dragging out the court process, costing me. I didn't even go to, I didn't even have a jury trial in those eviction cases that I've been through, and it still cost me thousands of dollars. Now imagine if I had to pay a lawyer to go to a trial. Okay, I mean, you could bankrupt a small landlord doing this mess. Okay, so yeah, that's ridiculous. I'm going to skip down a little bit in here, and it says, but many other states' Supreme Courts have, and they widely accept, that the right to a jury trial does not attach to special or summary proceedings. This court should follow suit, he wrote in his brief. Campbell said the kind of proceeding in this case didn't exist in 1875 when the state constitution was adopted. It was not created until 1974 when the legislature modernized landlord-tenant law. The case brought a number of so-called friend of the court briefs by a whole bunch of, ACLU, a whole bunch of pro-tenant groups, right? So simply put, this is going up to the Nebraska Supreme Court right now. Hopefully they use logic and common sense to figure out, hey, we need to keep this in place where there are not jury trials allowed. Now, I know there's other states where they are allowed, but I don't think it is optimal for the courts. I don't think it's optimal for the tenants. All you're doing is delaying the inevitable. Okay? If the tenants are not able to pay, they need to go.